Every morning, 8-year-old Samuel walked 3 miles to school barefoot. His teacher thought he was just another poor kid who didn't belong in their prestigious academy, until she discovered who he really was and why his presence there would make her cry tears she never expected to shed. The morning bell at Riverside Academy rang at precisely 7:45 a.m., echoing through hallways lined with oil paintings and mahogany trophy cases. This was Chicago's most elite private school, where tuition cost more than most families' annual income, and every student arrived in luxury cars with uniformed chauffeurs. Every student except Samuel. 8-year-old Samuel Chen walked through the iron gates each morning with his head down, trying to make himself invisible. His clothes were clean, but patched, his backpack held together with tape, and most noticeably, his feet were bare against the cold concrete. Other children whispered and pointed, their polished shoes clicking against marble floors, while Samuel's silent steps left small traces of dirt from his 3-mile journey. Mrs. Catherine Whitmore had taught second grade at Riverside Academy for 15 years. She'd seen every type of privileged child, but Samuel puzzled her. He'd appeared at the beginning of the school year with paperwork stating he was enrolled, but no parent had come to orientation. The office assured her his tuition was paid in full, so she'd accepted his presence without question. What bothered Mrs. Whitmore wasn't Samuel's poverty, it was his silence. In 15 years of teaching, she'd never encountered a child who spoke so little, yet absorbed so much. When she taught mathematics, Samuel's eyes would light up with understanding before she'd finished explaining. When reading exercises stumped classmates, Samuel would silently complete them, while others struggled with basic words, but he never raised his hand, never volunteered answers. When directly asked, his responses were whispered so quietly she had to strain to hear them. "Samuel, can you tell us what 7 times 8 equals?" "56, he'd whisper, then immediately look down as if ashamed of knowing the answer. The other children ignored Samuel entirely. At lunch, he sat alone eating a simple sandwich, while classmates enjoyed elaborate meals. During recess, he stayed inside reading books far above his grade level, while others played on equipment his bare feet couldn't safely navigate. Mrs. Whitmore found herself increasingly concerned. This brilliant child was being wasted, not because he lacked ability, but because something was clearly wrong with his situation. Her breakthrough came on a Tuesday in November. The class was working on multiplication tables that usually challenged even her brightest students. She'd given them a worksheet with 20 problems, expecting most children to struggle. Samuel finished in 3 minutes. Mrs. Whitmore approached his desk to check his work. Not only had he completed every problem correctly, but he'd solved them using methods she'd never seen a second grader use. In the margins, he'd written complex mathematical formulas that looked like high school algebra. "Samuel," she whispered, kneeling beside his desk, "where did you learn mathematics like this?" For the first time since school began, Samuel looked directly into her eyes. What she saw wasn't the blank stare of a struggling student, but intelligence so profound it took her breath away. "My daddy taught me," he said quietly, "before he went away." "What kind of work did your daddy do?" "He taught numbers to big kids at the university. Mama said he was really smart, but then the bad men took him away, and Mama got sick, and now I live with Mrs. Patterson, but she doesn't have money for shoes." Mrs. Whitmore's heart began racing. "Samuel, what was your daddy's name?" "Professor David Chen. Mama called him the number genius." The world stopped moving. Mrs. Whitmore knew that name. Every educator in Chicago knew that name. Professor David Chen had been one of the most brilliant mathematicians in the country, a prodigy who'd earned his PhD at 19 and revolutionized computational mathematics before 30. But 3 years ago, he'd been arrested by federal agents for allegedly selling research secrets to foreign governments. The case had dominated headlines for months. Professor Chen maintained his innocence, claiming he'd been framed by colleagues who resented his advancement. But evidence seemed overwhelming. Classified documents found in his home, suspicious financial transactions, meetings with known foreign agents. He'd died in federal prison while awaiting trial, and his wife had died shortly after from cancer, leaving behind their son who'd disappeared into the foster system. That son was sitting in Mrs. Whitmore's classroom, barefoot and brilliant. Tears began streaming down Mrs. Whitmore's face as the full tragedy became clear. This incredibly gifted little boy was the son of the man the media had painted as a traitor. He'd lost everything. His father to false accusations, his mother to cancer, his home to government seizure, and his future to a system that had branded his family as criminals. But Mrs. Whitmore remembered the end of Professor Chen's story. 6 months after his death, new evidence had emerged proving his innocence. Documents revealed he'd been framed by a colleague seeking to steal his research. The real traitor was arrested, Professor Chen was posthumously exonerated, and the government quietly settled with his estate. The settlement included substantial financial compensation and a formal apology. But Samuel apparently knew nothing about this vindication or the money that should have secured his future. "Samuel," Mrs. Whitmore said through her tears, "I need you to come with me to the principal's office. There's something very important we need to discuss." Samuel's eyes filled with fear. "Am I in trouble? I didn't mean to do the math wrong. I can pretend to be worse at numbers if you want." Mrs. Whitmore's heart shattered. This brilliant child had been hiding his intelligence, afraid that being smart would cause more problems. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to his level, "you're not in trouble. You're the smartest little boy I've ever taught, and that's something to be proud of, not hide." The conversation in Principal Morrison's office lasted 3 hours. Mrs. Whitmore explained her discovery while Samuel sat quietly, confusion evident on his young face. Principal Morrison made phone calls to social services, to FBI agents who'd handled his father's case, and to lawyers who'd worked on the exoneration. What they discovered was a bureaucratic nightmare. Samuel's foster placement had been arranged before his father's name was cleared. The settlement money had been placed in a trust fund that Samuel's foster mother knew nothing about. The child, who should have been one of Chicago's wealthiest young people, had been living in poverty because no one had connected the dots. Samuel qualified for academic opportunities that would nurture his extraordinary gifts. His test scores indicated he was performing at high school level in mathematics and reading. He needed specialized education, not basic grade level work. By the end of the week, Samuel's life had completely transformed. The trust fund was accessed, providing financial security and establishing an educational foundation in Professor Chen's memory. Samuel was enrolled in a gifted program that would allow him to advance at his own pace while still experiencing childhood with peers. Most significantly, the truth about his father's innocence was shared with Samuel for the first time. The little boy who'd been carrying shame about his family name learned that his father had been a hero who died defending his integrity. Mrs. Whitmore became Samuel's advocate and mentor, helping him transition from hiding his abilities to celebrating them. She arranged for advanced tutoring, connected him with other gifted children, and helped him understand that intelligence was a gift to be shared, not hidden. 6 months later, Samuel gave his first public presentation at a mathematics conference for elementary students. Standing confidently at the podium in new shoes and a crisp shirt, he demonstrated mathematical concepts that amazed professors twice his age. In the audience, Mrs. Whitmore wiped away tears, but this time they were tears of joy and pride. "My daddy always told me that numbers tell stories," Samuel said to the audience. "He said the most important story numbers can tell is that everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow, no matter where they come from or what people say about their family." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Samuel's story spread nationwide, inspiring reforms in how gifted children from disadvantaged backgrounds are identified and supported. The Samuel Chen Foundation, established with his trust fund money, now provides educational opportunities for brilliant children whose potential might otherwise be overlooked. Today, Samuel thrives in an accelerated program that challenges his abilities while supporting his emotional development. He still remembers walking to school barefoot, but now understands that his journey represents something powerful. Talent and potential exist everywhere, waiting to be discovered by someone who cares enough to look. Mrs. Whitmore continues teaching at Riverside Academy, but her approach has fundamentally changed. She now looks at every quiet child, every struggling student, every unusual situation as a potential Samuel, a hidden genius waiting for someone to see their true potential.